Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world of smoke, sparks, and sweat-streaked brows. You wake not in your comfy 21st century bed, but on a lumpy sack stuffed with straw, where every crunch beneath your shifting shoulders reminds you of a few wayward thistles that snuck in. The smell is your first clue of the day. Charcoal clings to everything, seeping from the forge that never quite went cold. You breathe in ash, iron dust, and the faint tang of sweat that has no chance to fade in a blacksmith's world. Outside, roosters complain at the dawn, but in here it's darker, more private, just you. The hiss of dying embers, and the knowledge that in a few hours your arms will ache like you've tried to hug a tree for too long. And yes, you probably won't survive this routine more than a week without modern conveniences. No ibuprofen, no air conditioning, and definitely no DoorDash delivering a latte to keep you motivated. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love it if you drop a comment with where you're re-listening from and what time it is. They right think it. It's wild how some of you are falling asleep on the other side of the world, while others are listening with morning coffee. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first moments of waking are strangely peaceful. Your forge still hums faintly from last night, the embers glowing like sleepy fireflies. You stretch, hearing your joints crack, a medieval reminder that no chiropractor will swoop in to rescue you. You swing your legs down onto the dirt floor. No wooden planks or rugs here under your toes. Meet cool earth, dry dust, and the occasional pebble that makes you wince. There's no separate bedroom. You sleep practically in the workshop, because who needs a division between life and labor? The forge is your roommate, your heater, and occasionally your enemy when it decides to belch smoke in the middle of the night. The sun hasn't quite broken over the rooftops, but you can sense the light creeping through the cracks in the timber walls. Medieval mornings are not gentle. There's no snooze button. Instead, your alarm clock is the knowledge that if you don't start soon, your fire dies. And if your fire dies, your livelihood crumbles. Every blacksmith learns quickly. Iron waits for no one. You shuffle over to the hearth, your bare feet picking up soot that will paint them black by breakfast. The forge looks like a slumbering beast, gray ash, coating everything with a faint glow if you poke the right spot. You grab the poker, stir lazily, and feel warmth breathe out. Sparks leap up like tiny orange insects before fading into nothing. You smile, relieved. This fire survived the night. That means you won't spend the next hour frantically striking flint or begging your neighbor for embers. Fun fact: medieval households often shared hot coals between them, like passing a torch of survival. It wasn't just friendly, it was practical. You add charcoal, hearing the faint crackle as the fresh fuel settles in. The smell thickens, and soon your nose tingles from smoke curling upward. With a few strokes of the bellows, those great leather lungs of your forge, you feel the beast waking fully. The flame brightens, spreading its orange tongue around the black chunks, and you're officially on the clock. Your body, however, is less enthusiastic. Yesterday's hammering still lingers in your muscles. Your palms are calloused, blistered in places, and your arms groan as if they're auditioning for a medieval tragedy. Still, you're used to it. Every blacksmith is a walking knot of soreness, a kind of permanent gym membership with no chance to cancel. Historians still argue whether medieval smiths lived shorter lives from all this strain, or if the hard work actually kept them durable. Either way, you're stuck with it. Before you really start, though, there's a ritual. You cross yourself quickly, muttering words that are half prayer, half superstition. Many smiths believed the forge wasn't just fire, and iron it was magic in its own way. After all, you transform rocks pulled from the earth into tools that feed families, weapons that defend villages, or even delicate hinges that keep a church door swinging smoothly. Some whispers claimed blacksmiths dabbled with sorcery, their fires linked to underworld powers. You don't correct those whispers, you let them swirl, because being seen as a little dangerous is its own protection. You reach for your tools, laid out from yesterday. Hammer, tongs, chisels. They rest heavy and familiar in your grip. Each one is an extension of your arm, though honestly. The hammer feels more like a relative that keeps borrowing money, useful, dependable, but exhausting. You'll be swinging it hundreds, maybe thousands of times today. Better limber up. From outside, the faint shuffle of villagers starting their own day drifts in. Someone drives a cow down the lane. Someone else coughs awake. You know soon enough, people will come knocking at your door, asking for a plowshare mended, a knife sharpened, or a horseshoe fitted. But for now, the moment belongs to you, your fire, and the slow breath of morning. You chew on a crust of bread left from last night, hard enough to chip a tooth but filling enough to pass as breakfast. A swig of weak ale chases it down, because medieval water isn't always trustworthy. It's not exactly Starbucks, but it keeps you going. You remind yourself to be grateful. Some mornings, even this simple start would feel like luxury. There's a certain quiet pride in these early minutes. No one's here to see you crouched in soot, hair tangled, hands already dirty. But you know the day hinges on this preparation. You're coaxing life into fire, preparing your body for labor, and setting the stage for everything to come. It's both mundane and sacred, just another morning, but also the spark that ignites survival. Somewhere in your mind, you wonder how long this rhythm has played out for smiths before you. Maybe your father, maybe his father before him. Rising in the half-light, stoking embers, and beginning another day of sweat and clangor. Historians still argue whether blacksmithing knowledge was always passed down through families, or whether outsiders could train into the trade. Either way, you're part of that unbroken chain now. You stand a little straighter, feeling the forge's heat growing. The air thickens, warm enough to bead sweat at your temples. You roll your shoulders, already preparing for the long haul. Your day hasn't even properly started, and yet your heart beats in rhythm with the low roar of the fire. This is the shadow of the forge, the moment between sleep and labor, where you transform from weary villager into master of metal. It's quiet, heavy with promise, and strangely comforting. The world outside might still be stretching awake, but in here, your day has already begun. The coals breathe louder now, flickering like molten eyes in the hearth, and your hands move with the easy rhythm of repetition. You scrape away the top crust of ash, gray flakes tumbling like snow that forgot how to be gentle. Each stroke of the poker uncovers heat beneath, and the glow expands until the forge no longer looks sleepy, but watchful, hungry. The bellows sit ready in the corner, leather folds creased and blackened, waiting for you to pull its wooden arms wide and push air through its lungs. Before you grip the handle, though, you pause. There's a small ritual here, too, something between a prayer and a habit so old you daren't even question it anymore. You touch the edge of your hammer to your chest, once, like a knight might kiss his sword, and mutter a short phrase under your breath. Half Latin, half mangled dialect. It's a scrap of blessing you probably inherited from your father. It might not be proper church liturgy, but hey, when you're dancing with fire and molten iron, you accept every ounce of protection, divine or otherwise. You finally pump the bellows, pulling in cool morning air and forcing it into the fire's throat. Flames leap greedily, the crackle shifting into a low roar. The heat pushes back against you, and beads of sweat already break at your brow. Nothing like a face full of sauna at dawn to kickstart the day. Somewhere in your head, you laugh, forget gym memberships or yoga mats. Blacksmithing invented hot yoga centuries early, with bonus sparks included at no extra cost. You step aside for a moment, rubbing your palms on your tunic. The black streaks just smear deeper, but at this point, your clothing is more soot than fabric anyway. Your neighbors in the village might start their day with a few Ave Marias or a quiet breakfast of pottage, but for you, the forge is the chapel. The rhythm of bellows and fire becomes a hymn, and the hammer will soon provide the music. Before the hammer sings, though, you glance at the small wooden cross hung lopsided on the wall. Religion shapes every hour of the day. Hear sunrise prayers. No meat on Fridays. Holy days, breaking up the weeks. You whisper one more plea, partly pious, partly desperate. May the fire not betray you. May the iron bend and not shatter. May your body last until evening. And maybe, just maybe, may today's customers actually pay in coins and not in turnips. The first piece of iron waits beside you, a rough bar salvaged from a previous tool that cracked under strain. Nothing is wasted. Iron is too precious to discard, so you reheat, reshape, and recycle. You shove it into the forge, burying it among the glowing coals. The hiss and faint metallic temps rise into the air. You know the dance by sight alone. Dull red means patience, bright orange means ready, and white hot means too late, you fool. While it heats, you settle on a bench and chew another bite of that crusty bread. It's not glamorous, but your stomach thanks you. Out in the village square, you hear the sound of church bells' 3 slow tolls. Morning prayers are beginning. Most of the town will shuffle into the stone chapel, muttering chants and hymns. You're tied to the forge. Sometimes you manage to sneak in, but more often, the fire demands attendance. Priests have scolded smiths for that, saying the forge distracts from God. But then again, someone has to keep the plow sharp for planting the priest's own fields, right? The irony smolders almost as hot as the coals. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were more respected for their essential craft or mistrusted for their strange, smoky world. On one hand, everyone needed you. On the other, your firelit workshop looked suspiciously magical. After all, you take a black, stubborn rock and pull gleaming metal from its heart. To some villagers, that smells like alchemy. To you, it just smells like burning eyebrows when you lean too close. You rise again and check the iron. It glows now, a warm orange, and you lift it with tongs. Sparks showering from its edges like a tiny meteor shower. Onto the anvil it goes with a heavy clank. You raise your hammer, muscles waking fully, and bring it down. The sound explodes in the quiet morning ringing note, sharp and commanding, bouncing off the wooden walls and rolling into the street outside. Clang, clang, clang. The rhythm becomes hypnotic, like a heartbeat amplified. The vibrations run through the hammer, into your arm, down to your spine, reminding you that this is what your body is made for. Striking, shaping, coaxing. Each blow flattens and lengthens the iron, stretching it toward its new life. Sweat runs down your temples, salt stinging your eyes, but you blink it away. Neighbors will hear this song. The hammer is louder than any rooster. They'll nod knowingly. The smith is at work again. Fire and iron alive in the heart of the village. Sometimes they time their errands to your rhythm. 3 clanks and a pause must be a horseshoe. Or so they joke. You know it's nonsense, but it entertains them, and laughter travels faster than smoke. Between strikes, you dip the iron into a water trough, steam erupting like a sudden ghost. The hiss is sharp, startling every time, but necessary. The smell, something only a smith truly knows. It's part steam, part iron temps, part, let's be honest, burnt hair, because your forearms live in the danger zone. If you were hoping for cologne, you're out of luck. Your scent today will be eau de forge. Ash Edition. The work continues, steady and relentless. You fall into a trance where hammer, fire, and breath align. The forge roars, the bellows sigh, the hammer answers. Somewhere in that cycle, you find peace. Not rest, never rest, but something that feels like belonging. This is what you were trained for, what you inherited, what you'll probably pass on if life gives you a willing apprentice. Occasionally, a stray thought sneaks in. Will today be repair work only, or will someone ask for something unusual? You've heard stories of smiths tasked with making charms, locks with hidden tricks, even instruments. One rumor insists a wandering minstrel once demanded a blacksmith forge an iron lute. That's probably nonsense, but it paints a funny picture. Imagine hammering strings onto molten metal and pretending it sounds like music. Spoiler, it wouldn't. Your arms grow warm, your hands ache, and yet you smile. The morning is yours, claimed with sparks and prayers, with heat and rhythm. Outside, the village is bustling now, but here, you're already deep in your day. The cross on the wall tilts slightly in the vibrations, almost nodding with approval or, maybe with warning. Either way, you keep hammering. Because in this world, the only true certainty is that fire burns, iron bends, and your work will never be finished. The iron bar has cooled to a stubborn black, its edges dulled and unyielding, so you shove it back into the coals. The forge snarls like a dragon with every push of the bellows. Your arms already feel the burn, but you grin anyway. This is the warm-up, the daily flexing that proves you're not just a villager, but the village's muscle. Heating iron is less like cooking and more like arguing. You don't gently coax, you insist. You pump air until the coals glow white at the core, until the iron blushes from red to orange, until it's finally pliable enough to listen. You lean close, careful but curious, watching the transformation. The raw iron is stubborn stuff, dug from the earth and smelted into rough bars. Yet now, with heat, it softens. There's something satisfying about bending will into metal, shaping the world one hammer strike at a time. If you think about it too long, it feels almost godlike though. You quickly shake that thought away. Claiming divine power in a medieval village is a shortcut to awkward questions, possibly with torches involved. Still, you can deny the pride. The blacksmith is the one person who can bully iron into being useful. You pull the glowing piece out with your tongs, sparks scattering onto your boots. They burn tiny holes, but you've stopped caring about footwear long ago. Onto the anvil it lands, ringing loud enough to send a chicken outside into a squawking panic. You raise your hammer, let it fall, and the iron flattens, stretching like dough under a rolling pin. Except this dough could shatter your skull if you mishandle it, so you keep your focus razor sharp. Each strike has its own language. A flat thud means the iron is losing heat and stiffening. A bright, ringing tone says you've hit it just right. You adjust your rhythm, swinging harder when it resists, gentler when it yields. Sweat drops onto the surface, sizzling in an instant. You laugh softly, congratulations. You've just seasoned your iron like a medieval skillet. Heating iron, you realize, is a dance of patience and timing. Too hot, and it crumbles or sparks uselessly. Too cold, and it chips like brittle stone. Somewhere between those extremes lies the perfect orange, the sweet spot where metal behaves like clay. That's the art, really. You're not just pounding blindly. You're negotiating, coaxing, persuading the metal to take on a new life. And what a range of lives. Horseshoes, knives, nails, plowshares, chains, even decorative hinges. Every piece starts the same way in the belly of your forge, glowing, humming, waiting. You might be making something mundane, but you know the villagers will depend on it. That plow blade could decide how much bread is on the table come winter. That chisel could carve the beams of a new roof. Even the smallest nail might hold together a door that keeps wolf's and worse outside. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were considered craftsmen or simply laborers. But you know the truth. You're both. You are sweat and precision, brute force and fine detail. Your neighbors might never see the artistry, but when they slam a gate shut or slice bread with a knife you forged, they're handling your invisible signature. There's a quirky little truth you recall, though. Some smiths were said to test their strength by bending glowing bars with bare hands. Sounds impressive, right? But also sounds like a quick way to smell like roasted pork. Maybe a few show-offs tried it. Maybe it's just tavern exaggeration. Either way, you prefer the hammer and tongs. Let the bards keep their fiery handshakes. You pump the bellows again, the leather wheezing like a tired animal, feeding your flames. The sound is oddly soothing, almost like breathing exercising hail. Exhale, heat, repeat. You wonder for a moment if this is why you never feel truly comfortable in silence. The forge has its own soundtrack, and without it, the world feels hollow. As you hammer, a few sparks leap onto your sleeve, smoldering tiny black holes into the cloth. You slap them out without breaking rhythm. Your tunic is already more patched than fabric. Anyway, one day you'll need a new one. But for now, you look like you've wrestled a constellation and lost. Your thoughts wander, as they always do in these long stretches of hammering. You think about how iron has changed everything. Bronze may have had its day, but iron is stronger, sharper, and far more stubborn, much like the smiths who work it. The villagers probably don't dwell on it, but you know, iron defines their world now. Without it, no farming tools, no weapons, no nails for their carts. And the funny part, the iron itself is everywhere under their feet, hidden in the dirt. They just need someone mad enough to dig it out, smelt it down, and hit it with a hammer 1,000 times until it behaves. A cart rattles outside, hooves clopping on the dirt road. The sound filters into your shop, but you don't pause. The iron doesn't care about carts or gossip. It demands your full attention. You strike, turn the piece, strike again. Your forearms throb, your shoulders ache, and your grip begins to tremble, but you refuse to stop. Because the moment you hesitate, the iron cools, and then all your work is wasted. The heat climbs higher, wrapping you in a cocoon of fire. Your face drips, your arms glisten, and your hair sticks to your forehead in wet strands. You've essentially built yourself an early version of a sweat lodge, minus the spiritual enlightenment. Though, to be fair, staring at glowing metal for hours could be mistaken for meditation. Maybe that's your enlightenment, one clang at a time. The piece finally takes shape. A long strip, narrowing at one end, thick at the other. You can already imagine it becoming a blade, or maybe a sturdy hinge. Not glamorous, but useful. And usefulness is its own kind of beauty. You quench it again, steam exploding upward in a hiss that makes you flinch, even though you've heard it 1,000 times. The iron darkens, settles, and waits for whatever comes next. You pause to roll your shoulders, stretching the stiffness. Your hands shake slightly, not from fear, but from fatigue. Still, you can't help but smile. You've tamed another stubborn bar of iron, and you'll do it again and again until the day ends. Sometimes you wonder if you'll ever truly master it, or if iron is the kind of companion you only ever manage, never fully command. Historians still argue whether medieval smiths saw themselves as artists or as simple laborers, but you think, maybe both are wrong. Maybe you're just an eternal negotiator, forever bargaining between fire and metal. The forge breathes, the bellows sigh, and the iron waits. You take a deep breath, steadying yourself. The day is far from over, and the hammer hasn't finished its song. Clang, clang. The sound rolls through your workshop like thunder trapped in a box, shaking dust from the rafters and rattling your teeth in your skull. The hammer song is more than just noise eyes a language, a rhythm the whole village understands, whether they admit it or not. For you, it's the pulse of the day, a steady heartbeat that measures time more faithfully than church bells or the rooster outside. Every clang is a reminder. You are here, you are working, and the iron bends because you demand it. The anvil beneath your strikes feels alive. Each blow sends vibrations up your arm, through your ribs, sometimes even rattling the back of your head like a bell rung inside your skull. You wonder if centuries from now, some scholar will claim blacksmiths went half-deaf from their own hammers. Honestly, you'd nod in agreement, though it's not like you'll live long enough to confirm the theory. For now, you just grin and swing harder. The neighbors probably curse you sometimes, hearing your metallic chorus at all hours. Then again, they'd miss it if it vanished. Your hammering is reassurance, the village's background music. Without it, their hoes wouldn't cut the soil. Their pots wouldn't hold water. Their gates wouldn't latch against thieves or wolves. You're loud, sure, but you're also necessary. And being necessary is its own shield against complaints. Today's work is simple. Nails. Hundreds of them. It's a kind of job that looks boring to outsiders, but will chew through your entire morning. A single nail means a strip of iron, cut, heated, tapered, hammered flat at the head. Over and over, until your arms ache and your fingers twitch with the rhythm even when you pause. By the time you're done, you'll have a pile that looks unimpressive but holds together someone's barn, cart, or maybe even their coffin. Dark humor? Yes, but around here, nails and coffins are always in steady demand. A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. In some towns, smiths were actually paid in nails during building projects. Not because nails were shiny or special, but because they were ridiculously valuable. A villager might guard a handful of nails the way you de-guard a purse of silver coins. And here you are, turning them out one by one like a baker tossing rolls into an oven. Except your bread could stab through wood and outlast centuries if treated right. You fall into a rhythm, hammering, turning, quenching, starting again. It's monotonous, but oddly hypnotic. Your brain begins to wander. You think about the sound itself, how it echoes off the timber walls, slips through the door, bounces down the street. Kids in the village sometimes imitate you, banging sticks on stones and shouting clang, clang, until their mothers drag them away. Annoying, sure, but flattering too. You're practically a one-man band, with fire for drums and iron for strings. Some scholars, those rare folks who love to argue about everything, still debate whether medieval smiths thought of their hammering as music. You can't answer for all smiths, but for you, yes, it's music. Not a soft lute melody or church hymn, but something primal. A pounding metallic chant that keeps your blood moving and your spirit awake. When the rhythm is right, you don't feel like you reworking. You feel like you're replaying the forge itself as an instrument. Between strikes, you pause to lift the piece with your tongs, checking its glow. A few more taps, and it's done. You toss the nail onto the growing pile, where it clinks against its brothers. The sound is lighter, gentler than the hammer's song, a kind of applause, if you let your imagination stretch. But the hammer doesn't rest long. You feed another strip into the fire, pump the bellows, and raise your arm again. Clang, clang. The repetition numbs your muscles but sharpens your focus. This is your meditation. Some villagers kneel in prayer, some wander fields humming, but you find peace in beating molten metal into submission. Well, peace is relative. Your shoulders will scream tomorrow morning. The forge heat rolls over you, and you wipe your forehead with the back of your wrist. The sweat instantly gathers soot, leaving you striped like a warrior painted for battle. You laugh at the thought if anyone asked you to fight, you'd probably trip over your own hammer. But here, in your domain, you do battle every hour. And your enemies are tougher than any soldier. Raw iron, unyielding and cold until you've burned it hot enough to tame. Another clang, and sparks scatter across the floor. You kick at one before it ignites stray straw, because the last thing you need is to burn down your entire workshop. You shake your head, smirking. What a way to go that would be. The blacksmith defeated, not by fire and steel, but by a lazy spark he ignored. The hammering stretches on, time blurring. You can't say if it's been 20 minutes or 2 hours. You measure only in nails, in glowing bars, in the ache of your arms. The rest of the world feels distant. The gossip, the prayers, the market chatter, it all fades beneath the roar of your forge and the music of your hammer. And yet, every so often, the clang carries differently. A hollow ring, maybe, or a sharp bounce. It's not just noise, it's feedback. The hammer tells you what the iron wants, what it resists, where it's weak. You adjust without thinking, trusting instinct more than thought. It's a conversation, even if outsiders only hear noise. You stop to sip ale from a wooden cup, the liquid lukewarm but refreshing. The contrast between cool swallow and hot air is sharp, almost shocking. You sigh, stretch, and glance at the pile of finished nails. Progress, small but steady. You remind yourself, this hammer song is the soundtrack of survival. Villages rise or fall on the strength of their iron, and without your rhythm, that iron stays stubborn rock. You've probably never thought of yourself as poetic, but when the hammer swings just right, you can almost believe the forge is singing back to you. Clang, clang. The song continues, whether anyone notices or not. The hammer finally rests for a heartbeat, your wrist dangling like it belongs to someone else. Sweat trickles down your cheek and vanishes in the soot streaks that have become your natural war paint. You think, just for a fleeting moment, that maybe the morning will stay yours. But of course, the world has other plans. The shuffle of footsteps drifts closer, the unmistakable sound of worn leather on dirt. A shadow falls across the doorway, and before you can even mutter a prayer for peace, a neighbor steps into view. Hat in hand, sheepish grin plastered across his face. He holds out a cracked hoe blade like a guilty offering. His words spill out in a rush. Could you mend this by week's end? The fields won't wait. You nod without ceremony. Farming tools are the backbone of your work hoes, plows, sickles, all battered by stubborn earth and careless hands. Each spring, it's like the soil itself conspires against you, breaking blades and dulling edges, and the farmers march to your forge as if answering some secret whistle. You half joke to yourself that you run your own little harvest here, except your crop isn't grain, it's iron reborn in fire. Without your touch, their seeds stay buried in hard ground. He sets the hoe on your bench and mutters about payment. Maybe a handful of coins, though you already sense it'll end up being onions again. Last month, it was carrots. Before that, turnips. You've become something of a reluctant produce merchant, your pantry packed tighter than any respectable market stall. Sometimes you catch yourself thinking you could open a soup kitchen instead of a smithy. You even consider forging a lock for your shop door not to keep thieves away, but to stop the vegetable flood before it drowns you. No sooner has he shuffled off than another customer arrives, a young mother balancing a basket and a dull kitchen knife. She offers eggs, fresh from her coop. You suppress a laugh, imagining one of those eggs rolling too close to your forge, cracking with a hiss and leaving your shop smelling like burnt breakfast. You sharpen the knife quickly, sparks showering in neat arcs, and hand it back shining enough to make her gasp. She thanks you twice over before hurrying away, child tugging at her sleeve. By mid-morning, the door has become a revolving one. An old man totters in with a gate hinge, swearing he heard it groan louder than his own knees. A boy trails behind, holding a sickle snapped clean in half. He mutters something about leaning on it by accident, but his guilty eyes betray a wrestling match with weeds gone wrong. Then a stable hand barges in, sack clinking with 3 worn horseshoes, complaining that the mare throws him off as fast as he nails him on. You keep your expression neutral, but inside, you're tempted to tell him the horse is probably smarter than he is. Each new arrival brings chatter with their iron. The forge, you realize, is more than a workshop, it's the beating heart of the village. Gossip rides in with every broken tool, spilling into your smoky space like birdsong. One farmer swears a merchant caravan is expected next week, and everyone should prepare for exotic spices and cloth. Another insists the miller's daughter is soon to be betrothed, though no one agrees to whom. Then someone mutters about the lord of the manor raising rents, sparking a full-blown debate in your doorway while you keep hammering, sparks flying as punctuation to their arguments. You've never needed to visit the tavern for news. The tavern visits you every morning, armed with hoes and knives. You grunt, nod, maybe toss in a sarcastic quip, but mostly you let your hammer speak for you. Iron doesn't care about betrothals or rent hikes, it demands focus. Still, there's comfort in the flow of faces. Your forge ties you to everyone. Even though you live in smoke and fire, you are no hermit. You are the quiet partner in every harvest, every meal, every gate swung shut at night. Without your repairs, the world stutters. And yet, there is always that flicker of unease in the villagers' eyes when they look too long at your forge. The fire roars like a living thing, unpredictable, and many whisper protective prayers as they step inside. A few even trace small charms over their chests, hoping to leave your shop unscathed. You don't mind? The superstition amuses you. Let them think your workshop is half sacred, half dangerous. It adds a layer of mystery that never hurts your standing. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were pillars of respect or figures of fear. The truth probably lies in the middle. People need you, but they also flinch at what you wield, flame and metal bent to your will. You never correct them when they mutter about magic. A pinch of fear can be as useful as a sack of onions. And speaking of oddities, there's that story you once heard about smiths in certain towns doubling as dentists. Yes, people trusted the same steady hand that forged horseshoes to yank out rotten teeth. You shiver at the idea and mutter a quick thanks to every saint that no one here has made that request yet. Still, the way old Jacob clutched his jaw last week makes you uneasy. If he shows up tomorrow asking you to fix his mouth, you'll probably have to invent an urgent job outside the village. By late morning, the forge has become a kind of stage play. The bellows hiss their lines, your hammer sings its sharp chorus, and villagers chatter over it all. The air grows so thick with heat, smoke, and noise that it feels alive, like the forge itself is eavesdropping on their gossip. You wonder sometimes whether the flames remember these conversations, whether the sparks carry secrets skyward with every strike. One older woman lingers after her sickle is mended, leaning close to whisper about a wolf spotted near the pastures. Her voice drops, heavy with worry. You nod gravely, though you keep hammering. Wolves are dangerous, yes, but so is a pile of unfinished tools. You file the thought away for later tonight, perhaps, while you sort through your mountain of bartered onions and eggs. The villagers will argue over whether the wolf was real or just a drunk shepherd's shadow. The rhythm of the day is clear now. They bring broken iron, you return it whole, and in between, you trade jokes, fears, and gossip like currency. They drift in, drop their burdens, and drift out lighter, carrying a piece of your labor back into the world. Your forge empties of tools, but fills with obligation. For every hoe sharpened, 2 more weight in the pile. For every knife edged, another dull one arrives before the sparks even fade. At last, noon creeps closer. Your stomach growls, demanding bread and cheese. The crowd thins as villagers scatter to their own duties. For a rare moment, silence tiptoes into the forge. You set the hammer down, stretch your back until it pops like a stubborn hinge, and take a long sip of ale. The smoky air still tastes like iron, but for once, there's no one telling you about wolves or rent hikes. You close your eyes, savoring the quiet. Maybe, just maybe, you'll steal a nap before the afternoon rush. But of course, fate has a sense of humor. A knock rattles the doorway again. The knock that rattles your doorway at midday has a different weight to it. Villagers usually shuffle in, hesitant, smelling faintly of soil and sweat. But this is sharper, louder, deliberate. You glance up from the last set of hinges you've mended, wiping your brow with the back of a soot-blackened hand, and see a silhouette framed in sunlight. Boots polished better than any farmer's, a belt too fine for plowing, and dangling at the man's hip, the unmistakable glint of a sword. He steps in without waiting for an invitation, the way men do when they believe the world already belongs to them. He unslings the weapon and lets it clatter onto your workbench with a deliberate clang. The blade's edge is chipped, dulled in spots where it has bitten into something harder than flesh, probably stone. Maybe armor, or maybe just careless practice. His lordship requires this, sharpened by week's end, the retainer says flatly, though you both know it isn't a request. It's an order tucked neatly inside politeness, the kind that carries consequences if ignored. You nod once, holding the weapon, letting its weight rest across your palm. It's heavier than the farming tools you've been tending all morning, but somehow more fragile in its own way. A chipped sword is a danger not only to enemies, but to its wielder. Neglected steel betrays its master. You mutter a neutral reply and set the weapon down, already calculating the time you'll need to straighten its temper and draw the edge back to life. The retainer lingers. His eyes travel across your forge, half curious, half disdainful. He notices the soot streaked down your arms, the sweat dripping from your temple, the disorderly pile of hoes and sickles waiting their turn. His lip curls, but not at you at the idea that his master's steel is sharing space with peasant tools. You almost laugh, but you keep your mouth shut. The hammer has taught you one lesson above all. Steel bends when struck at the right moment, but men of rank never do. When he finally leaves, the door scraping closed behind him, you let out the breath you hadn't realized you'd been holding. Serving the nobility always feels like being caught between anvil and hammer. Too slow, and you're accused of laziness. Too fast, and you're accused of rushing. Too outspoken, and well, you probably won't survive that lecture. Still, their work is unavoidable. The peasants bring you onions, eggs, and sometimes the rare coin. The nobles bring you steel that decides who owns the onions and eggs in the first place. Your forge straddles both worlds, and you're never allowed to forget it. You lay the chipped sword on the anvil and light the fire anew. The metal will need coaxing back into shape. The roar of the bellows fills the room, sparks rising like stars as you heat the blade. When you strike it, the sound rings sharper, crisper than when you mend a hoe. It's as if the weapon itself knows it was born for blood, not barley. There's an old belief you once heard in the tavern, that a blacksmith who worked on swords was partly responsible for the deaths the blade would cause. Some men said each life taken pressed a weight on the smith's soul. You shake the thought away with a grim smile. If that's true, your soul must look like a lead ingot by now. Still, you take your time. Each strike has to be measured, each dip in water perfectly timed. Noble weapons demand patience, and patience demands silence. It's a strange contrast, the peasants' chatter still echoing in your ears. Their gossip about wolves and marriages and caravans and here. Now, the only conversation is between hammer and steel. Halfway through, another figure appears. Different boots, different cloak, but the same air of entitlement. This one carries a spearhead, bent and dulled from some careless swing. His lordship expects this repaired quickly, he says. You nod again, wordless, adding the piece to what you privately call the priority pile. Tools can wait. Noble weapons cannot. The villagers notice the change immediately. When they peek into your forge and see gleaming swords lying on your bench, their voices soften. They barter with hushed tones, eyes darting toward the noble steel, as though it might overhear and take offense. The forge doesn't just smell of smoke, now it smells faintly of hierarchy. You remember a quirky tidbit told by a traveling merchant once? In some places, smiths whispered charms into noble weapons, muttering strange syllables between hammer strikes to give blades singing edges. You've never tried it yourself, but the rhythm of the hammer almost feels like a chant tonight. And truth be told, if whispering nonsense meant a noble left your forge happier and maybe tipped a coin instead of a turnipue, do it gladly. Historians still argue whether smiths were ever truly respected by nobles or merely tolerated out of necessity. You can see both sides. They look down on your soot-streaked face, yes. But the truth is simple. Without you, their proud weapons become useless sticks of dull metal. In that, you hold power even if you never claim it out loud. The hours crawl by as you sharpen, polish, and temper. Sweat drips into your eyes. The hammer numbs your fingers, but you do not falter. The sword's edge gleams again, sharper than a crow's beak, dangerous in its beauty. You set it aside with care, as though it might leap back at you if mishandled. Then you turn to the spear, drawing its bent iron back into line, muttering under your breath not charms, but curses aimed at the fool who damaged it so badly. Outside, evening shadows stretch longer, painting the forge's doorway in fading gold. Inside, the glow of the fire makes time meaningless. You could be hours deep into night and you'd never know, except for the gnawing hunger in your gut. The noble's demands have stolen your day, leaving little room for the onion barter crowd. Tomorrow, you'll face their complaints. Why isn't my plowshare finished? Why is my axe still dull? And you'll have to shrug, point to the gleaming sword, and hope they understand, or at least forgive. Finally, as the sun disappears beyond the horizon, you lower the hammer and lay the nobleman's sword on the bench, gleaming in the forge light. It's ready. Ready for some night's pride, ready to decide who eats and who starves. You allow yourself one deep breath, shoulders sagging, and listen to the quiet that follows the last strike. Then, of course, footsteps return. The forge, it seems, never sleeps. The forge hums in the dim afternoon light, the smell of heated iron mixing with the lingering sense of sweat and smoke. Your arms ache, but the rhythm of hammer against metal has a hypnotic quality. It's almost meditative if meditation involved burns, blisters, and the constant threat of singed eyebrows. You pause only long enough to lift a new strip of iron from the coals, its glow warm against your fingertips. Another piece, another promise of utility, another opportunity to coax stubborn metal into obedience. This batch is for plowshares, the kind that will cut into soil stubborn with winter's frost. The farmers have been waiting, their eyes glinting with anticipation as they handed over your payment. A basket of onions, a few eggs, a scrawled note promising coin when the miller's daughter's wedding is paid for. You've learned to smile at these gestures. In truth, you'd take iron over onions any day. But the villager's barter is as binding as any coin. A plowshare, after all, is a weapon of growth, and you wield it with the same care you do, a sword meant for battle. You place the heated iron on the anvil and let the hammer fall, once, twice, 3 times. Sparks leap in a brief, bright dance, fading almost immediately. The rhythm is familiar, comforting, but also exacting. Each strike flattens, stretches, shapes. Too many blows too quickly, and the iron could crack. Too gentle, and it won't take the shape you intend. It's a delicate negotiation between hand, eye, and the stubborn spirit of metal. The forge seems to respond to your touch, the bellows exhaling a low, steady hiss as if marking time with you. Outside, you hear the faint clatter of hooves and the distant chatter of villagers, carrying news you can't yet use. Someone spotted a fox near the granary. A cart broke a wheel on the eastern road, and the miller's daughter may indeed be betrothed by month's end. You chuckle softly, shaking your head. Life outside is a tangle of small crises. But in here, there is only you, the hammer, and the obedient glow of iron. You recall a quirky story you once overheard in the tavern. Some smiths were said to measure their skill not by the plowshares or swords they forged, but by how many nails they could produce in an hour. The tale was likely exaggerated, but it strikes a chord. There's a rhythm, almost musical, in repetition. And as you bend another glowing strip, hammer ringing against anvil, you feel that music, the cadence of work. Each strike a note in a song only you can hear. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were primarily laborers or artists. You've never needed to decide. The distinction is meaningless when your body aches and your hands blister, when the success of your day is measured not in fame, but in whether the plowshares you forge will dig the soil without breaking. In this shop, artistry is endurance, patience, and an intimate understanding of metal's temperament. The first plowshare starts to take form, its edges sharp, curves smooth, balance even. Sweat drips onto the metal, steam hissing and snapping as you quench it in water. The sudden hiss startles a few flies who scatter in every direction. You can't help but smile. Even insects respect your forge. Or perhaps they just fear it. Either way, the forge rules. A small interruption. A boy peers in through the open door, clutching a broken sickle. His eyes are wide, a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. You gesture him inside. He sets the tool on the bench, muttering an apology. You shake your head, almost chuckling. He's learning a lesson you already know well. In this craft, mistakes are expensive, but instructive. You work on the sickle while he watches, occasionally flicking a spark in his direction, careful but enough to keep him on his toes. As the afternoon stretches, the rhythm never falters. One plowshare complete, another strip of iron into the fire. Sparks rise, bellows hiss, hammer falls. Your muscles ache, but fatigue has a strange way of sharpening focus. You're aware of every subtle sound, every vibration through the anvil, every glow of the steel as it heats and cools. You anticipate its reactions before they happen, hands and eyes synchronized with the iron's will. At some point, a peculiar thought strikes you. In a few regions, blacksmiths were once called to forge not only tools, but charm small iron talismans to protect children, livestock, or crops. Some claim the blacksmith's knowledge of fire and steel imbued these charms with power. You laugh softly at the notion. Perhaps it's superstition, or perhaps it's true in a way no scholar can prove. Either way, it adds a layer of magic to your otherwise pragmatic day. The day wanes, sunlight shifting through the cracks of your timber walls, casting long shadows across the floor. The forge glows steadily, a constant companion in the half-light. You glance at the pile of completed plowshares and nails, satisfied with their weight, balance, and utility. Each piece a small triumph, a quiet victory in a world that seldom stops to notice. By late afternoon, fatigue threatens to slow your rhythm. Your arms tremble slightly with each blow. You stretch, roll your shoulders, sip lukewarm ale from a chipped cup. The forge does not care. Metal does not forgive. And yet, there's a comforting permanence here, a rhythm you trust. A world contained between fire, hammer, and anvil, where the only chaos is that which you choose to allow. A final glance out the doorway reminds you of life beyond the forge. Villagers returning to fields, carts rattling over uneven roads, the distant cry of a dog. All of it continues without pause, yet here, in the forge, time bends around your work. Iron doesn't gossip. Iron doesn't complain. Iron simply listens and yields when handled with patience and respect. The forge hums, the bellows sigh. Your hammer falls again, and the day stretches just a little longer, perfect in its unrelenting continuity. The shadows grow longer as the afternoon drifts toward evening, yet the forge remains a small sun in the corner of your world, radiating heat and light. Your arms ache, your back protests with every movement, but there's a rhythm now one forged from hours of repetition, sweat, and heat. The hammer rises, falls, and rises again. Each strike punctuating the steady hiss of quenching water and the soft sigh of the bellows. You almost forget the world outside, the one filled with gossiping villagers and unpredictable weather, because here, in this glowing cocoon, time moves differently. Today's work focuses on repairing a collection of worn plowshares. The edges are chipped from repeated strikes against stones hidden beneath stubborn earth. Some are bent, the iron crying under your hammer as you coax it back into shape. Others are merely dull, requiring careful reheating and tempering to restore their cutting edge. The farmers who brought them would never understand the delicate balance you must maintain the precise strikes. The angle of hammer against anvil, the heat of the forge as it softens and strengthens the steel simultaneously. They simply want the work done, and they want it done yesterday. A curious thing about working in the forge is that your mind wanders while your body performs the repetitive task. You think of small, quirky, historical tidbits. Like how some blacksmiths were believed to have secret codes etched into their work, tiny flourishes on sword hilts, or plowshares that marked them as the maker. Nobody could read these symbols except the smith and maybe a few apprentices who dared ask. You've never marked your own work in such a way, but the thought makes you smile. Perhaps one day, long after you're gone, a historian might stumble upon a tiny clue of your existence hidden in the curve of a blade or the arc of a nail. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths saw themselves as mere laborers or as skilled artisans. And you can see both sides. Certainly, laborers hammer at their tasks for survival. But artistry emerges when muscle, patience, and intuition collide. The plowshare you shape now will carve the soil for years, perhaps decades, long after your hands have cooled. That is artistry. That is power, quiet and unassuming, woven into every piece you forge. You glance at the pile of repaired and new tools stacked neatly beside the anvil. Horseshoes for the village's livestock, nails for repairing doors and roofs. Knives sharpened to a dangerous edge and plowshares restored to functional perfection. Each piece represents hours of careful work, of fire mastered and metal tamed. The forge hums approval, a constant companion in this ritual. A boy peeks through the doorway, curiosity shining in his eyes. He's carrying a broken sickle, the handle cracked and blade chipped. You wave him in, setting the iron aside to attend to him next. His hands tremble slightly as he places the sickle on your workbench, and you can see the pride in his eyes when he watches you begin repairs. It reminds you of yourself at his age, wide-eyed and eager, hammer in hand, learning to negotiate with metal. The fire crackles and hisses, sending occasional sparks into the air. You flinch as one lands on your sleeve, then laugh softly. These are the small, unplanned moments that keep the day alive. You remember reading about medieval smiths who claimed sparks flying toward them were messages from Vulcan, the Roman god of fire and metal. You're not much for superstition, but it's a comforting thought. Sparks might not be divine, but they certainly feel like a companion at times, a playful reminder that the forge is alive. Hours pass in a blur of heat, sweat, and metal. You quench another plowshare in the water, watching steam hiss and curl upward, carrying the scent of iron and your labor into the air. The rhythmic thud of hammer against anvil becomes almost musical, a lullaby for the determined, for those who understand that creation is as exhausting as it is rewarding. Outside, the sun dips lower, painting the village in long, soft shadows, but inside, the forge glows bright and persistent. Your body aches, every muscle humming from the effort, but you feel an odd serenity. There's something meditative about this work, something grounding in the repeated cycles of heating, striking, quenching, and reshaping. You wonder whether that SY blacksmiths were always at the center of the village because we anchor the world with our work, even if nobody else notices. Occasionally, a villager drifts in with a tool, a knife, or a horseshoe, their voices soft, hesitant, as if afraid to interrupt the music of the forge. You nod, accept their offerings, and set them aside. Each new piece is another challenge, another chance to coax steel into obedience, and each completed item is a quiet triumph, a small victory over the stubbornness of raw metal. You pause briefly to stretch your arms and shoulders, feeling the burn in your muscles as the sun finally dips below the horizon. The air in the forge is thick, warm, and comforting, scented with iron and smoke. You sip some lukewarm ale from a chipped cup, the liquid a small balm against the exhaustion creeping through your limbs. Even so, you know the forge will not wait, that the next piece of metal will demand attention before the day is truly done. A thought drifts through your mind. Some smiths were believed to whisper charms into their work, murmuring quiet words over swords and plowshares alike. You smile softly. You've never done such a thing. But perhaps the rhythm of your hammering is enough, your own quiet spell woven through every strike, every quench, every curve of the blade. Whether it is superstition or truth matters little. The forge listens all the same. Evening falls fully now, the sky outside darkening while the forge glows warmly within. You glance at the stack of finished work, the evidence of hours spent shaping, bending, and perfecting. Each tool, each nail, each plowshare carries your labor, your care, your silent signature. Outside, the village continues its chatter, its life unaware of the rhythm and dedication that keeps it moving. You strike the hammer one last time, letting it rest with a deep, satisfied thud. The forge hums in response, a companionable exhale of heat and light. The day is nearly done, and though your muscles ache, your spirit feels grounded. Tomorrow will bring more tools, more challenges, more sparks. But for now, the forge and you are at peace, wrapped in a gentle glow of hard-won craftsmanship. The evening deepens, and the forge's fire throws long, dancing shadows across the timber walls. You pause for a moment, letting your arms dangle after hours of hammering, bending, and quenching. The aches in your muscles have become a familiar companion, like an old dog lying at your feet, reminding you that every strike leaves its mark not only on iron, but on yourself. Outside, the village grows quiet. The distant chatter of children replaced by the soft croak of frogs and the occasional bray of a donkey. Here, in the forge, time bends, and you measure it not by hours, but by the shape of steel and the rhythm of your own breath. Tonight, your task is something different, crafting a set of ornate hinges for the Lord's manor. Unlike the plowshares and nails you've spent the day making, these pieces demand not only precision, but artistry. Each hinge must fit perfectly, move smoothly, and carry a subtle decorative flourish, curves and spirals that speak of care and skill. It's the kind of work that makes the villagers peek in with awe, though you suspect few of them will ever know what went into it. For you, it's as a chance to remind yourself why the forge is not only a place of labor, but of quiet creation. The iron is stubborn at first, refusing to bend exactly where you need it to. You strike with measured force, sweat dripping from your brow onto the anvil. Sparks fly in small showers, each one a tiny, fleeting star. You think briefly of an old story you once heard. In some villages, smiths were believed to carry fragments of the fire god Vulcan's spirit in their hammers, which explained why sparks seemed to leap unpredictably. You chuckle softly. If true, you'd be the luckiest smith alive, or the most cursed. Historians still argue whether decorative work like this was common for village smiths or a privilege reserved for those near nobility. In your case, necessity and opportunity have collided. The Lord's manor requires beauty and function, and the forge is your proving ground. Every bend, twist, and curve is a negotiation between heat, hammer, and hand. You adjust the iron, quenching it in water, and then reheating, letting it cool and bend with careful patience. The night is still, save for the occasional hiss of water and the low creak of the bellows. You work in near silence, allowing your mind to wander. You imagine the hinges installed in the manor doors, gleaming subtly in torchlight, unnoticed by everyone who passes, but essential to the door's function. A kind of quiet satisfaction fills you small victories that no one else will celebrate, but that will endure nonetheless. As you shape the final hinge, you notice the subtle differences in each piece. Even when forged to the same specifications, metal has a mind of its own. Some bars resist, others yield too easily. You've learned to listen to them, to feel their temperament under your hammer. This is the part no apprentice ever truly understands: the conversation between smith and steel. An unspoken language learned only through years of sweat and fire. A soft wind drifts in through the open door, carrying the scent of wood smoke and the distant river. You pause, letting the quiet wash over you. And think of a quirky tidbit you once read. Medieval smiths often believed that the direction of the wind could affect the temper of their metal. Too strong, too weak, and the iron might betray your intent. You smile, knowing it's superstition, but secretly appreciating the poetic idea that even the air conspires with your craft. Your hands are blackened and blistered, your back stiff, but your spirit feels lighter as the hinges take shape. You arrange them carefully, inspecting each curve, each joint. They are functional, yes, but also beautiful in a quiet, unassuming way. A rhythm has emerged from the laborious song of metal, fire, and patience that only you can hear. Outside, the village has quieted completely. The moon rises, silver light spilling across the rooftops, touching the fields where the plowshares you made earlier will carve the soil tomorrow. In this glow, the forge feels like a sanctuary, a world apart from gossip, barter, and worry. You are both maker and witness, shaping tools that will endure far longer than your own day, your own body. Hours slip by, unnoticed. Each hinge is complete, and you step back to survey your work. Satisfaction swells quietly in your chest. There is pride here, in knowing that every piece you touch carries the imprint of your care. You sip the last of your lukewarm ale, letting it slide down your throat as the forge hums with residual heat, a living reminder of the day's labor. And yet, as you wipe your hands and stretch your aching muscles, you sense it's a quiet inevitability of tomorrow's demands. New tools, broken implements, and perhaps even more noble requests will arrive. The forge never truly rests. But for tonight, in this moment, the world feels balanced. Iron has been tamed, the hinges are ready, and your rhythm, though exhausted, has found its completion. A last glance at the glowing coals reminds you that even as the forge cools, it will awaken again tomorrow, ready to bend and shape once more. The day is done, but the craft endures, timeless and patient, waiting for the next strike of hammer against steel. Night has settled fully over the village, the moon casting silvery light across thatched roofs and quiet streets. Inside the forge, the fire glows low, embers hissing softly as they settle into the last comfortable warmth of the day. You sit back on a stool, arms heavy, fingers stiff, the familiar ache in your shoulders stretching across your back. The forge is quiet now, save for the soft sigh of the bellows you leave running, coaxing the embers to life just enough to keep the air warm and the steel responsive. The rhythm of your day has slowed, but the forge never truly sleeps. Even in its quiet moments, it seems to breathe, pulsing softly in time with your own tired heartbeat. Today was long, filled with hammer strikes, quenching sprays of water, and the constant shuffle of villagers at the door. From cracked hoes and chipped knives to noble swords and ornate hinges, the forge received them all, your hands mediating between the stubbornness of iron and the urgency of human need. It's exhausting work, and yet there's an unspoken reward in the very act of creation. Each piece carries a part of you, your patience, your care. Your silent determination, and every tool you finish will shape someone's life tomorrow, whether they notice it or not. You stretch your legs, letting the knots in your muscles loosen. The ache is familiar, comforting almost, because it means you've labored honestly. A small smirk creeps across your soot-streaked face as you remember a curious tale. In some regions, blacksmiths were believed to imbue metal with fragments of their own essence, such that every strike of a hammer left a trace of the maker's spirit behind. Whether superstition or truth, it's a comforting thought. Perhaps that's why the forge feels alive. It's not just fire and metal. It carries you within it. Historians still argue whether the blacksmith was more of a laborer or a creator, a craftsman whose hands were instruments of survival or artistry. You suspect the truth rests somewhere in between. Plowshares feed the village. Swords protect or terrify. Hinges open doors to new spaces. In every piece, the forge demands precision, intuition, and a deep understanding of metal's temperament. And in return, the forge offers a strange kind of companionship. Its warmth, its hum, its sparks, they mark the passage of time better than any clock. Counting moments in sweat, patience, and repeated strike. You glance around at the tools and weapons scattered across the workbench, plowshares ready for the fields, nails for repairs, knives sharpened to a fine edge, a gleaming sword from the Lord's retainer, and the ornate hinges that will decorate the manor doors. Each object is a story, a testament to the day's work. The forge is silent now, but it carries echoes of the morning, the footsteps of villagers, the soft pleadings of barter, the occasional laughter, and the quiet weight of nobility's demands. All these voices linger in the smoke, in the metal, in the rhythm of your hammering. A small stack of tools for tomorrow waits patiently at the corner of the bench, iron gleaming faintly in the dying firelight. You imagine the villagers returning at first light, each with their own needs and stories. And you feel the peculiar satisfaction of knowing that the forge will once again be at the center of it all. Your hands, calloused and blackened, have become instruments of survival, of creation, of quiet influence over the rhythms of village life. You think of how your work affects more than just iron. It shapes the lives of every farmer, every child, every neighbor who relies on your skill. Outside, the wind rustles the leaves, carrying faint sounds of the night. A dog barking somewhere down the lane. Frogs croaking near the stream. The distant laughter of a tired miller. The village sleeps, but you remain a quiet sentinel, watching over the forge and the tools that will carry life forward. The fire sputters and hums, sending occasional sparks dancing across the floor. And you imagine that even the smallest sparks carry a piece of your day into the world. You sip a last, lukewarm mouthful of ale, letting it settle in your stomach. The forge is warm and comforting, its glow casting dancing shadows across the walls. The hum of embers and soft hiss of remaining flames lull you into a slower rhythm, a gentle cadence that matches the steady beat of your tired heart. You allow yourself to relax fully, sinking into the comfort of routine. And the quiet knowledge that, though your body aches and your hands are raw, the day has been well spent. The forge's fire dims further, leaving the room bathed in soft, amber light. Outside, the village is still, the fields quiet under the moon's watchful gaze. You breathe deeply, letting the day's sweat, noise, and chaos fade into the lingering warmth of the forge. Tomorrow will bring new work, new demands, and new rhythms, but for now, let yourself rest in the quiet companionship of fire and metal, soothed by the gentle hum that has been your constant companion throughout the day. Slowly, you close your eyes, letting the forge's warmth seep into your shoulders, your hands, your weary back. The soft hiss of embers, the faint creak of timber, and the distant nocturnal calls outside become a lullaby, coaxing your mind to unwind. Each tool you've shaped, each blade, plowshare, or hinge, rests in quiet perfection, a testament to hours of sweat and patience. The forge itself seems to exhale, a contented sigh that mirrors your own, as if it, too, is ready to rest alongside you. In this final moment, the day dissolves. You feel the ache in your muscles soften, your breathing slows, and the rhythmic hum of the forge blends with the night outside. There is no rush, no demand, only the gentle assurance that you have shaped the world in small, enduring ways. You are a blacksmith. You are the rhythm of iron and fire. You are the quiet pulse at the heart of the village. The forge cools around you, the fire reduced to glowing embers that pulse faintly like the heartbeat of the room itself. Your body sags into the worn stool, muscles loosening as exhaustion melts the tension built up over the long day. Outside, the village rests under the quiet moon, soft shadows stretching across the fields you helped prepare with your tools. You breathe deeply, letting the warm, smoky air fill your lungs, carrying away the weight of labor and leaving only a gentle sense of satisfaction in its place. Your hands, blackened and scarred, rest in your lap. The marks of the day, the smudges, the blisters, the faint burns are more than reminders of toil. They are proof of creation, a tangible connection to every plow turned, every door swung open, every blade that will protect or nourish in the days to come. There is a comforting permanence to this work. Even as the forge's warmth fades, the metal retains a whisper of your effort, a subtle echo that will outlast your body's tiredness. The room is quiet, save for the gentle hiss of the last embers and the distant chorus of nocturnal life. The rhythm of the day lingers in your mind. Hammer falling, metal bending, sparks dancing in brief, bright arcs. You allow yourself to sink further into this memory, imagining the faces of villagers carrying your tools home. Their burdens eased, their lives a little smoother, thanks to your hands. There is an almost meditative peace in this thought, a soft hum of pride and connection that fills the spaces left by fatigue. You close your eyes, letting the forge's residual warmth wrap around you like a soft blanket. The day's energy ebbs away, leaving a slow, gentle pulse that matches the quiet cadence of night. Every breath brings calm, every exhale a soft release. You think of the stories embedded in the metal, the silent legacy of your work, and you allow yourself to drift. Soothed by the knowledge that your labor matters, that even small acts of creation ripple outward in ways the world often forgets. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let the warmth of the forge, the rhythm of the hammer, and the lingering scent of iron guide you gently toward sleep. The day is done, the forge rests, and so can you. Carried on the quiet assurance of purpose, patience, and the soft glow of labor completed.